Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services, if we can please kindly turn off all cell phones or electronic devices, or please place them on silent. Thank you. Good morning, first of all, and thank you for being here. Rabbi David Englander of Congregation Bethel. Together with Bethel's Rabbi Sam Hollander, we come bearing the sincere condolences of our wonderful Chazan, Elisa Pomerantz-Boro, who is facing a family loss of her own in these days. Otherwise, she would most certainly have been here with us, and I just want to begin by saying that your Bethel family stands with you today as you come together once again to face loss and to begin once again the mourning process today for your honored mother, sister, and grandmother Ruth Feldman, Zichrona Livracha, of truly blessed and impactful and lasting memory. We're here in Holy Chapel, Platt, to do what she would have expected. So much so that she told me that you never really had to talk about it explicitly. It was obvious that it would be a Jewish funeral service that would pay honor and tribute to her when the time came. And sadly, you sit together today as a family and as gathered friends and community because this time of loss has once again arrived. The Jewish funeral service is based mainly on the notion of kavod, of honor. Certainly we're here to honor Ruth and the life and legacy that she lived and also now leaves for you. But we're also here to honor you. We're here to honor your position, if you will, in your life's journeys as mourners. Those who once again face loss and prepare to continue with mourning traditions, including Kaddish, as you have been so firmly committed to for your honored father and grandfather, Ed, who we're thinking of today as well. So I want to begin with some words of honor, those that are couched within one of the Psalms that has been utilized in the Jewish funeral service for many, many years. It's Psalm 15, and as you hear the description of the psalmist who will point out some of the characteristics, and we'll get back to characteristics later, of a good life that's led. You will be reminded of the good life that Ruth Feldman lived and led, and I pray that these moments will inspire you to even deeper and broader memories of someone who you've been thinking about nonstop, someone about whose life you shared so generously with me and others, and a few speakers today will also reflect on as well. So for now, me and Rabbi Hollander will split the Psalms for this traditional Jewish funeral service, beginning with Psalm 14, which reads Mizmor LeDavid. Adonai mi yagor ba'ohalecha mi yishkon b'har kadshecha olech tamim u'fo'od tzedek v'dover emet bi'ovavo lo raga'a l'shono lo asa l're'eu ra'a v'cherpa lo nasa akrovo nivze be'inav nim'as ve'et yirei Adonai yechabed nishba l'harav v'lo yamir kaspo lo nata meneshech v'shochad anaki lo lakach osei eila lo yimot le'olam. A Psalm of David. Do we deserve to enter God's sanctuary? Can we merit a place in the presence of God? Live with integrity, do what is right, speak the truth without deceit, have no slander upon your tongue, do no evil to others, do not mistreat your neighbor, spurn a contemptible person, but honor those who revere Adonai. Never retract a promise once made, even if it may bring you harm. Practice all of your business fairly. Accept no bribe against the innocent. Make these deeds your own. Then shall you stand firm forever. Rabbi Hollander will chant Psalm 23.
David. Adonai rohi lo exar. Bino deshe yarbit seni. El memnucho jilan leini. Nafshi yeshovev. Nafshi yeshovev. Yancheni b'magle tzedek leman shemho. Kam ki helech v'get samhavet lo yirara ki hatahim hadi. Shivtecha umishantecha. Shivtecha umishantecha. Emayenachamuni. Taroch lefanai shulchan. Taroch lefanai shulchan. Taroch lefanai shulchan neged zorerai. Dishanta v'Hashem en roshi. Dishanta v'Hashem en roshi. Dishanta v'Hashem en roshi. Kosi revaya. Achtov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai v'shavti beveit Adonai. V'shavti beveit Adonai le'orech yamim. A Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. To begin the sharing of tributes and memories, I call upon Ruth's son, Richard, to begin those memories.
Good morning. On behalf of my entire family, I want to thank you for being with us today. I'm speaking for my siblings, Bruce, Beth, and Marcy, as well as our spouses, Marco, Jeff, and Wendy. Mom was born January 7th, 1929 in Philadelphia to Lena and Benjamin Smith. When we asked Mom a few years ago if she recalled the hospital where she was born, she answered without hesitation that she was born in South Philly at St. Agnes Hospital. And even though we couldn't understand why she might have been born at a Catholic hospital, she insisted that it was St. Agnes. St. Agnes closed a number of years ago and was converted into a medical office building. And at the time I was working for Penn Medicine, they opened an office there, and I was seeing patients there. And it was remarkable to think that I was working in the same place that decades before my mother had been born. Mom next lived up in the Strawberry Mansion section of North Philadelphia. Mom's stories about growing up always centered around how hard it was for her family and how hard her father worked during the Depression. My sisters recall her telling them a story that her family was down to their last dollar and her father used that money to ride the trolley for a job interview and then eventually a job. What was important to her, though, was that while growing up, she was surrounded by her aunts and uncles and cousins. When Mom was in middle school, she became friends with Shirley Levin, and their friendship endured her entire life. And Shirley married Uncle Murray, and they became lifelong friends of my parents. They traveled together, celebrated many occasions together. Years later, when we would drive through Mom's old neighborhood to the Robin Hood Dell for summer orchestra concerts, Mom would point out the streets where she had lived, as well as the former location of her favorite candy store. Mom always had a sweet tooth, particularly for cake and vanilla ice cream. In the last few weeks of her life, the only thing she would eat at times was vanilla ice cream, and she enjoyed it 3 or 4 times a day. When Dad passed away a few months ago, we toasted him with 15-year-old scotch, but we will toast Mom with vanilla ice cream. After Mom graduated high school, she went to work at Raymond Rosen to help support her family. Not being able to attend college was something she always regretted. Through a coworker at Raymond Rosen, though, she was set up on a blind date with Dad, and the rest is history. They married in 1951 in New York City. We are lucky to have movies from their wedding. What a gorgeous couple they were. And while we have many photos of my parents, their wedding photo, which is out in the front, is a particular favorite of mine. Mom and Dad worked as a team, but Mom was the one who managed the home front. Mom juggled multiple roles at home. She drove carpools to Hebrew school. She was always driving us to the library or a bookstore. She made sure we made it to piano lessons, ice skating lessons, horseback riding lessons. Mom and Dad wanted to be sure we had the opportunities that they did not have when they were growing up. Meanwhile, while doing all this, she was cooking, cleaning, doing laundry, and keeping track of the 4 of us. She was devoted to her parents, to her brother, aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces, nephews, friends, and particularly her grandchildren. Our Cousins Club get-togethers were one of my happiest childhood memories. Mom and Dad would play gin rummy with her aunts and uncles and cousins for a penny a point. Mom was happiest when our family was celebrating the holidays, or a birthday, or traveling together. Somehow, with all of this going on, she played bridge and mahjong. She joined Hadassah and Synagogue Sisterhood. She loved to read and learn. She did New York Times crossword puzzles with a pen. She loved mystery novels. She was interested in politics. And these things lasted her entire life. She started a gourmet cooking school with some of her friends that met in our kitchen at home until they outgrew the space. She collected recipes and cookbooks and loved the cooking shows on TV. While she loved cooking in general, she really loved baking. She made the world's best cinnamon raisin rugelach. And even though we have some of the recipes, we have never succeeded in duplicating her results. I think the extra ingredient was the love she added to whatever she was doing. What I will miss most, though, is her kindness and generosity. My cousin Allison described her as being smart and funny and kind and inclusive and observant and vivacious. My mother and father instantly accepted my husband Marco into the family the first time that I brought him home, and they did that with all of their children's partners. My mother was beautiful on the outside as well as the inside. She taught us the importance of families, spending time together. In the last few years, when she was able to do less, she was still able to enjoy coming to family and holiday dinners. I want to thank Gabby, Ika, and Elena for taking exceptional care of my parents these last few years. You will always be part of our family. Thanks to David and Bobby Smith for their many visits. Words cannot express how important these visits were to us and to my parents. We know how much my parents loved you and look forward to spending time with you. We will miss Mom tremendously, but know that she and Dad are reunited again after being apart these last few months. Thank you.
Honor to call on Jacob, who will be followed by Ben.
My name is Jacob Desmond, and I am the son of Beth Feldman and Jeff Desmond, and I'm one of Ruth's grandchildren. It's impossible to put into words what my grandma means to me, so I want to share some memories that I believe show the special impact she had on my life. From the time I was young, I saw Grandma as the embodiment of kindness and generosity, freely giving her time and love. Whether it was helping with school projects, holding family gatherings, or simply lending a listening ear, Grandma was always available. Her home was a place of comfort where she welcomed everyone with open arms and never hesitated to extend the invitation to come over and stay the night. And speaking of those nights, I have such special memories of those visits with Grandma. They always included spending time together at the library or the movies, painting pottery at Color Me Mine, and eating meals at her kitchen table. And as strange as it may sound, nothing was better than Grandma's grilled cheese on raisin bread with a side of the sweet gherkin pickles she always kept in her fridge. And of course, she was never one to forget dessert or her Philly roots, so also a butterscotch crumpet. Grandma also exemplified the importance of family. At any gathering, you could hear her saying, "That's so wonderful," as she caught up with everyone. And as her grandchildren all know, she made a point to connect with each of us in a way that made us feel special and understood. She took an interest in our lives, celebrated our successes, and offered support in difficult times. Her pride in her grandchildren was clear, illustrated by the dozens of photos of us filling her home and kitchen, celebrating our lives and accomplishments. Grandma and Grandpa showed me what real-life partnership and love looks like. Whenever they walked places together, they were always holding hands. At the annual Passover Seder, I can so distinctly picture Grandma at Grandpa's side. They were always together, and whenever you thought Grandma, you also thought Grandpa. So as we gather to remember and celebrate my grandma, I am so grateful for the lessons she taught me and for the countless ways she shaped my life.
Hi, I'm Ben Smith. Ruth was my aunt. A few months ago, when we gathered for my uncle's passing, I told a story of going to a Flyers game back in the 70s as a child. We sat very close to the ice. A fight breaks out right in front of us, and as you can imagine, the crowd is going crazy. And what I had shared is that my uncle just gave me a sort of a wry smile. And but my aunt, she sat very calm, and in a lot of ways that embodied who she was to me. And there were lessons that I sort of learned. I learned as a child, but didn't really recognize them until I was an adult. And the words that I would use to describe her have already been stated: gracious and kind, courteous, composed, genuine, invested in her family and in her faith. Now for me, I think as I grew up, it was somewhat confusing. I would talk about my family and trying to recognize like who was who's on what side. So my parents divorced when I was young, but my aunt made sure that I was a part of the family, and so I would say, and I actually only have one aunt. My mom is an only child. My dad has a sister, and so as I was describing to what is now my wife, I'd be like, well, these are cousins, and all these folks, because I felt so included, and it was a challenge to sort of sort out and think about, but I think it just demonstrates the real care and joy that she took in bringing me as a part of that family. So, and in some ways, she was like a grandmother to me, and a really important part of my life, and somebody who I aspire to be. So I'm going to share stories through the eyes of a boy, but the lessons come from me as an adult. And it was very clear to me that it was important she connected with me. When we went to the holidays, we were at my aunt's house. And so my mom was the one that brought us there. And again, they were just so accepting. When I was young, my mom was in a car accident. As you can imagine, as a single mom at that time, it was very difficult. And of course, my aunt was right there to help out. And I think what I realized, of course you would help, but she was managing 4 kids and, as Richard said, lessons and dinners and all those things. And yet, of course you take and you become a part of that family. And it's, but the stories that I remember were things like, I'm a very picky eater, as a lot of my family knows. And so she made chicken cacciatore, and, as a gourmet lessons and an excellent chef, there she was patting it dry so that I didn't have to eat the sauce, okay? Kindness and accepting. I can remember a Passover dinner, all the plates laid out on the one table. We go in and we start the Seder, and Muffin ate the gefilte fish. Now, for me, I was really glad that the gefilte fish was gone. But what I remember, and again, through a boy's eyes, how composed she was in the face of that. And that composure in the face of adversity is something that, again, I tried to aspire in my own life. As I became an adult and I moved into the location I was, it was interesting. I had accepted a job, and she called and she wanted to tell me about the area, tell me which synagogues were in that area, what I might encounter. And what I found was that, and I don't know how she knew, but she knew about the area that I lived in. And it took me many years to figure that out, but yet she had this innate way of trying to convey that and to not just warn, but also make sure that you're able to embrace the community. She came in and she visited our house. We lived several hours away. It was so meaningful, and she made it seem so easy, like the Staples Easy button that you see that you push, like that's what it seemed like. And yet, as an adult, I recognize how challenging all of those pieces are, and it was amazing that you could actually sort of make it look that way. We would come and we would visit. We always went to the Short Hills Diner, and she just wanted to know, like, what's going on in your life, your children's lives, like what's good, so that she could celebrate it. And even as recently as just a few years ago, as we gathered, and those family Passover dinners continue, and it's amazing to be able to be so inclusive of so many people in the family. The children wanted to organize a picture, so we're setting up, and there's like 50 people there, and you're trying to get a picture, and realizing the dementia that she was dealing with, and you might say that she wouldn't recognize, but it's going on, and at some point she said, "That's enough." And that was enough. Like, that was enough. That was it. Everybody started moving, and again, because as the leader, she was able to sort of guide us to that. But I think there are 2, for me, very poignant stories. One is that my mom is gay, and in the 70s, with 3 children, that's a very difficult thing, especially for somebody who's on the other side of the family. And she was so accepting of her and of us, and made us feel so loved. And that ability to accept people for who they are, not just in words, but in actions, is something that is so incredibly powerful, and something that I try and embody in my own life as a lesson I learned there. And for a long time, she was estranged from her brother, from my dad. And I don't know the details as to why, but when my daughter turned 1, there was my mom, of course, the bubby, throws a huge party. And they're both there. And for me, at least, again, recognizing as somebody young, I see them connect at that party, and begin a reconciliation in their lives. And that's also not easy if there are people that you don't talk to or speak to, and then to realize how important they were to each other, and that it's never too late to do the right thing. And again, for me, that's an inspiration. I see those qualities through her children and their spouses, her grandchildren. I see that there. And for me, that's an inspiration. And so as I look at this, not as an end for me, but as a continuation of trying to be those embodiments of the great qualities that she brought to life in her own life and inspired in others. And so for me, as I live my life, I try and make myself a better person because of who she was, and her legacy will live on through those actions.
Well, first of all, thank you very much to Richard and Jacob and Ben for the beautiful reflections, and I was marvel at how people can gather the strength and focus to get their thoughts together even as they're dealing with the aftermath of loss. So we thank you for doing that so beautifully on behalf of the rest of the family. Though in some ways you've said really the most important and loving things about Ruth's life, ask for your permission in sharing a brief reflection with you as well. And if there's any repeating, we'll just refer to it as emphasis. So Sunday night, just amazing, it's just a couple nights ago, I had the privilege and honor of listening to these wonderful now grown children. And as Rabbi Krupnik is fond of saying, children in love, as they reflected on the fulfilled and beautiful life of their truly honored mother, Ruth. And when I got home, I happened to turn on the Sunday night football game, and just then, the announcer said that the quarterback of one of the teams and his number one receiver had a routine of getting to their daily practices together every day at 6 a.m. so they could work together intensively to make sure that on game days, and this is what they said, they would be on the same page with each other. And I thought, wow, I just heard the most moving description of an exceptional couple, Ruth and Ed, who worked in tandem through their many decades together to do just that, to be on the same page, to present to you a united front if necessary, and mostly to set what seems to be just the best example for you and for everyone in their wide circle of friends. Their lives were examples of what it means to travel the road of the years we are granted, intertwined in values, perspective, priorities, and most of all, love. Having seen you frequently on the Bethel Zoom since your dad's passing, and hearing how often your father's name came up in our conversation in tandem in connection to your mom's, I just want to affirm the truly challenging and painful aspects of being back here in this space so very soon, just a few months after saying goodbye to your father and your grandfather. We can be fully grateful for a long and accomplished lives really, and we can still be guided by our Jewish tradition to know that this is a period of once again adjusting to loss. It is a new period of mourning, all but a bit of which will overlap for both Ruth and Ed as this year of mourning unfolds. I pray that you'll be blessed with the strength that you need, as well as with your already proven capacity to channel something of your parents' positive approach to living to the fullest extent possible, and to push forward, to be together, and to embrace all of your many blessings with Ruth's characteristic gratitude. I do want to emphasize that the way that you reflected on the role that your parents played in your lives as younger children, as a team, with their similar parenting style, with no good cop and no bad cop routine, with what you described as a gentle touch, as well as placing the highest priority on your education. And ahead of their time, they, and she especially, made sure to communicate that women needed to be able to look to a career where you would be able to take care of yourselves if necessary, and you took that advice to heart. As what would come to be called a stay-at-home mom, but which we now know is really the CEO of family operations and well-being, she was indeed there for you in all ways and in all things, while also maintaining and growing her friendships and amazing pastimes and constructive hobbies, including this commitment to gourmet cooking, which I think I can observe on everyone's behalf is really one that was mutually beneficial to you and everybody else. And I want to emphasize how in your own time you would bring home those with whom you would share and build your own lives. And Marco and Wendy and Jeffrey were welcomed and embraced, and you came to love your in-laws as parents. We recognize and honor that love and also your loss today. Ruth and Ed, as you heard, would host for many years Rosh Hashanah dinners and Passover seders until those seders got so big you had to rent space elsewhere. Kind of a terrific problem to have, in my opinion. Your childhood home was because of the friendly atmosphere that Ruth created, and let's face it, the freezer full of very tasty baked goods, the place where your friends wanted to gather and hang out as well. And beautifully you described how some of the very best memories of hanging out together as a family with your parents never missing a step or a beat were the multi-generational trips that you enjoyed over the years. Beautiful memories to support and be with you following loss, as well as, I'm going to guess, not a small number of photographs in a variety of different technological formats, as that way of recording our lives has evolved so significantly over the duration of Ruth's life. And it was, of course, the arrival of what would total up to be 8 grandchildren that would establish a new focus of the love that is unique. It represents the most special of connections, and each one of you made that special connection in your own way. Time alone with your grandparents, as well as time together, resulted in lasting memories and a bond that I promise you does not ever break. The love, influence, and power of the example of wonderful grandparents is something that stays with us like little else. And you will each carry that love with you in ways that are lasting and that are so very meaningful. Though I'll be playing to type here, I do want to emphasize for a moment Ruth and Ed's lifelong connections and commitments to the Jewish communities of which they were a part, including Beth Jacob, which eventually evolved into the spiritual home of our friends down the street at Kol Ami. Commitments and expressions that included regular Friday night service attendance, life cycle events like B'nai Mitzvah, sisterhood, commitments, and many synagogue-based social events. You also reflected on a memorable family trip to Israel and another Israel memory, of how during the Six-Day War in 1967, your parents both talked about and followed up on buying Israel bonds to be of meaningful support. Their commitments to Judaism and to Israel were consistent throughout the years. Your family Shabbat Zooms during COVID was really wonderful to hear about. And channeling, I'd like to think, both Jewish and humanitarian values. They had a special passion for supporting those in need of food, including by supporting the Fisher Food Pantry run out of our own Jewish Federation, of which they were also supporters, as well as their being generous with their resources toward many other good causes, including hospitals, the Shriners, St. Jude's, and more. I told you we were going to circle back to qualities, and I think that Ben said it very clearly and beautifully. To cast it into specifically Jewish terms, there's a Hebrew word that translates to characteristics or qualities of a person. That word is midot. One might choose to ask or inquire about the good midot that a person lives out in their lives. And it is, in addition to the specific memories of experience you are blessed to have together, something that stays with us as an example to us long after someone's earthly journey has come to its inevitable end. You remember and you will emulate in your own way someone who inhabited and exhibited some of the loftiest midot toward which our tradition calls on us to aspire. You remember and will model a person of grace and dignity, of excellent manners, who was always put together and presentable, who was the opposite of ostentatious, who always exuded what you described as an essential sweetness, and maybe most of all, someone who you wanted to be with and someone who desired nothing more than to be with all of you. Your Bethel family joins me in extending our deepest condolences to Richard and to Marco, to Bruce and Wendy, Beth and Jeffrey, to Marcia, to Ruth's brother, David, and to Bobby, to these 8 grandchildren, Jessica together with Sid, Matthew, Andrew, Jamie, Jacob, Mitchell, Haley, and Rachel. You will always carry your grandparents' love with you, and they will be with you whenever you think of them, which I know will be so very often, as you all will through this period of mourning and well beyond. May the soul of Ruth S. Feldman be bound up in the bond of eternal life. May she rest in peace, and let us say amen. I'd like to remind everyone that Shiva will commence at Jeff and Beth's home, 108 Oakmont Drive in Moorestown, with visitation welcome today following the interment at Locustwood, and also a service at 7 o'clock p.m. Wednesday, visitation welcome from 2 to 4 and 6:30 to 8:30 with a service at 7 o'clock p.m. and Thursday from 6:30 to 8:30, also with a service at 7 o'clock p.m. This time for the El Maleh Rachamim memorial prayer invoking Ruth's Hebrew name and those of her parents. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit.
El Maleh Rachamim Shochem Pamromim Amse Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina B'malo Kedoshim Utorim Kizohar Harakia Mazirim Et Nishmat Rachel bat Binyamin V'Leah Shalcha L'Olam Ha Began Heden Tia Benuchatza Ana Barachamim תסיריה בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצור בצור החיים נשבעתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח לשלום על משכבה, ונאמר אמן.
Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure to the soul of Rachel Bat Binyamin Vilea Ruth Feldman, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful one, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace, and let us say Amen. This time I invite you to be seated for another few moments.